You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. So Brian Kelly was at the Coaches Caravan last night in Metairie and talked about a lot coming out of spring football, some things that they know, some things that they feel like they still don't know. One of the things Brian Kelly said going into spring was that they expected to be at 84 scholarship players when they started fall camp. And obviously they had some more spots in this class to fill. But Brian Kelly said, quote, "We didn't win on some guys in the transfer portal." Namely, they were looking for tight end, cornerback, and offensive line help. Well, they did get Seven Banks from Ohio State. They missed on Tyler Steen, the offensive lineman from Vanderbilt, who ultimately picked Alabama. And as he said, an unnamed defensive player. So Kelly said, quote, "That's what we were hoping for. It didn't work out." So they're going to be a little bit under 84, which was the target that he had set, and clearly still under 85, which is the limit. You could always award those scholarships to a walk-on and make them a scholarship player. But again, we're talking about guys that show up on campus as scholarship players, which is why it's important to note what the NCAA Division I Council approved yesterday. And I don't want to go too deep into the weeds of it, but we talked about it yesterday, how they lifted the cap of 25. So as it stands, you could only sign a hard cap of 25 players in a given class. But what's happened, transfer portal and all, you're losing more guys than you're able to sign over the course of that cycle. So you're having teams have far fewer than 85 scholarship players. So it's sort of a roster management, a health and safety type thing. And so that's why they want to build that up. But what's a little curious to me is Brian Kelly said he's not sure. They have 2 spots left. They have 2 more scholarship spots for this year if they want to go find players. And Brian Kelly said he's not so sure that he's going to use those spots because the window's closed to enter the transfer portal to be eligible this year. That, of course, was May 1st. But remember, there's a caveat. Grad transfers would be immediately eligible. Remember Joe Burrow? He didn't show up here till June. Remember Terrence Alexander, the defensive back from Stanford? Darren Evans, the defensive back from Nichols? Cole Tracy? All of these guys didn't show up or even commit till much later. And if you're a grad transfer, you can go and be immediately eligible. That's something we saw Justin McMillan do when he left LSU and went to Tulane. He left in August, was eligible. So keeping in mind that in this current recruiting cycle, you're not going to be capped at 25. It doesn't matter. It's not like you need those spots to go backfill next year. It doesn't do you any good to save the spots because you have no cap. You can just sign to get back up to 85, whatever that number is. So if there are players out there, even if they're not immediately eligible grad transfers, if it's guys you'd like to take in the portal, take them. Guys that even if they have to sit this year, that you could have and to be on the roster for next year, I'd say do it. There's guys they like. Now, guys that are on the roster and 2 positions in particular that they talked about was offensive line and then quarterback. So Brian Kelly said he feels good about the offensive line coming out of spring. That was a gigantic question mark going into spring, right? LSU lost 4 starters on the offensive line. The only guy back was Cam Wire, and he's kind of lost his starting gig, it would appear anyway, with the freshman Will Campbell kind of holding down left tackle. But the reason Brian Kelly seemed really optimistic were because 2 guys that didn't participate in spring, and that's Anthony Bradford and Garrett Dellinger. Kelly said, quote, of Bradford, they said they're pegging him as a tackle, which means if Will Campbell's your left tackle, then Anthony Bradford is your starting right tackle. So what do you do with Miles Frazier, Cam Wire? Good problems to have, guys who are veteran guys with a lot of experience that aren't going to be starters on your team. It means you have starters, guys with starting experience that now add good depth. But here's what Brian Kelly said. He said, quote, of Bradford, he's got some really good versatility, but we'll see where he is. He's got a really big summer ahead of him. He hasn't been in our offseason program. He's got to stay healthy when you're off that long. We've got to be careful with him, but I think we'll peg him at tackle. So they finished left to right with Campbell, Shorts, Turner at center, and then Miles Frazier and Cam Wire on the right side. What you're likely looking at is a different right side of the line, where you'd go Campbell, Shorts, Turner, Dellinger, Bradford, and then backups like Frazier and Wire and Marlon Martinez, who's coming back. So you're looking at a deeper position group on the offensive line than you initially thought, in large part because two guys who played a lot for you last year and were not available in spring are going to be back, in addition to the transfers that you've added, and Will Campbell showing, yeah, he's a beast and he's ready to roll as a freshman in the SEC. Quarterback is the other interesting thing that he talked about, and this is an ongoing conversation, and I can't do any radio interviews anywhere without being asked about LSU's quarterback situation and who I think is going to start, and I've made that abundantly clear. But the thing that Brian Kelly said that was of interest is that during spring, they did not customize anything in the offense for specific quarterbacks despite having a different skill set. They basically gave all four of them a basic offense and said, go run this. And so that didn't necessarily appeal to certain guys' strengths. He said in the fall, they're absolutely going to do that. To quote, our offensive system wasn't put in for any one of those guys in the spring. We're now going to put in pieces for each one of them that fits them. And then they'll see how they separate. The biggest question there is, what traits do they want in a quarterback? That's the unknown that we've only guessed at. And I've pointed out many times that when you look at Brian Kelly's time at Notre Dame and you look at guys like Ian Book or Malik Zaire, you look at quarterbacks that have the running component, guys that are mobile, that can make plays with their feet. And Everett Golson is another one who they brought in. That's Jaden Daniels. I mean, I don't know what anyone. Jack Cohn, the Wisconsin transfer that played this year at Notre Dame, he's the exception. And they really went and got him because he was a guy who just played a ton of football. And so they took advantage of the transfer portal and got a veteran guy. I could even look at Denbrock, and you could look at the guys that he had at Cincinnati, and it's the same thing. Or guys that Denbrock and Kelly had together at Notre Dame. It's the same thing. If you want a mobile quarterback, that's not Miles Brennan. I'm not saying Brennan won't win the job. What I'm saying is, if these coaches have a desire to have a mobile quarterback, a guy that can make plays with his feet, and have that as a part of the offense, and they didn't put any of that stuff in during the spring, well, if they sprinkle that in fall camp and then lean into the things that Jaden Daniels really good at, you may see him start to ascend in an offense that he's more comfortable with. That's what's going to be most interesting for me once they hit the ground running in fall camp, is what are those specifics Brian Kelly's talking about whenever they start to lean into each guy's, what makes each guy sort of unique in this competition. So, I mean, I heard everything that you all heard, and we watched the spring game, and you could talk about accuracy with Jaden Daniels, and maybe that's the bugaboo that's going to keep him from winning this job, maybe. Or maybe the ability to improvise and make plays with his feet and add that dimension, that dynamic to the offense is the thing that will get him the job. We'll find out in the fall. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.